Good morning, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar from Crowcon. The topic of the webinar today is TWAs and how they can link into our T4, which is one of our most popular personal 4-gas monitors. We're going to talk a little bit about what a TWA is, where they come from, what it means, and then how the T4 can help. So before we start, a little bit of housekeeping. If you could all please mute your microphones. This gives everybody the opportunity to hear the presentation in its entirety without any feedback, which can sometimes happen if you do have those microphones on. If you do have any questions as we go throughout this presentation, just post them in the questions section. There's a little questions box that you can use there. So pop them in that, and there is space at the end of the presentation to answer any and all questions that do come in the question box. And finally, the webinar is being recorded today. If you would like a copy, please get in touch with us at marketing@crowcon.com. That's marketing@crowcon.com, and we'll happily send you a copy of the recording so that you can look through it again at your leisure. So first of all, exposure limits explained. Workplace exposure limits. I think anyone working within our sector understands the danger of large-scale gas releases, whether that's flammable gas, whether it's toxic gas. We know these can be extremely hazardous, and they can even cause death. And of course, that's why we have these gas monitors. That's why we use them. You know, we want to make sure people are healthy, safe, and protected from these potential hazards. So we're all very aware of that. But something that we might be less aware of is that prolonged exposure to lower levels of gases can also cause significant health problems. So, you know, there might just be a small amount of, for example, H2S. It's not big enough to trigger an alarm. It's not immediately hazardous to your health. But if you're constantly breathing in just a tiny amount, day after day, month after month, for some employees, year after year, in the longer term, it can cause problems. And if we look at H2S as the example, a gas that a lot of us are familiar with, at a low level, you're looking at painful skin rashes and irritated eyes. If you're exposed for a prolonged period to a sort of mid-level, then you're looking at low blood pressure, headaches, loss of appetite, weight loss. There's other issues there. And again, obviously a high level for prolonged periods, well, you know, we know that that's serious. It's coma, it's brain damage, it's death. So there are problems that can come from being exposed to lower levels of gas, but for long periods of time. So as a result of this, workplace exposure limits are in place, often referred to as WELLs, workplace exposure limits. Excuse me. There are two major global references for these, really. One is in the UK, and it's the Control of Substances Hazardous to Health regulations, and they're the ones that define these workplace exposure limits. The USA has its own version. It's the Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and they define them. They call them PELs, permissible exposure limits. But whether it's a WELL or a PEL, it's a similar principle. This is about what you're allowed to be exposed to on your shift to maintain safety in that longer term and health. If you do want a little bit more information on this kind of stuff, then there are health and safety executive documents. I've noted at the bottom there, EH40, workplace exposure limits, and HSG 173, monitoring strategy for toxic substances. If you Google those and find those, you can find a lot more background and detail to this directly from those regulators. So the UK Health and Safety Executive stipulates that workplace exposure limit, the WELL. And how this works, they are occupational exposure limits, and they're averaged over time. So averaging that out over 15 minutes is known as the short-term exposure limit, STEL. And averaging it out over 8 hours is known as the long-term exposure limit. So you've got two options there. What's the 15-minute average of that workplace exposure limit? And what's the 8-hour average of that workspace exposure limit? And those are the short-term and long-term limits. Collectively, these are called TWAs, or time-weighted averages. And most gas detectors nowadays will give you an alarm if you go over. You'll get a TWA alarm to say you have exceeded a time-weighted average. It might be the short-term exposure limit, it might be the long-term exposure limit, but either way, your detector is going to beep at you if you exceed one of these time-weighted averages. So if we take a look here, I've highlighted a few of these just for your reference, really. Again, remember, you can get a copy of this webinar if you contact us at marketing@crowcon.com. So I've put this in here just so that you've got some reference points for what are these long-term exposure limits, what are these short-term exposure limits, what are they if we look at the workplace exposure limits set from the UK executive, what are they if we look at the permissible exposure limits over in the States. You'll notice that generally speaking, they're aligned. They're not normally too different. They're reasonably in track with each other, the different ways of measuring it. But you can see there what those limits are. And I've highlighted some of the common gases that we all face within our workplaces. So carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, H2S is in there. And of course, I've got some of the other ones on there: hydrogen cyanide, phosgene, ozone, sulfur dioxide, which again, you may come into contact with. Note the figures shown here are at normal ambient pressure and temperature. We do know that some of these figures can change depending on atmospheric condition and so on and so forth. But again, I've put it at the bottom there just so you understand what these are measured against. So now that we know a little bit about what these things are, who makes them, and how they're defined, what the different words mean, we know we've got the workplace exposure limits. They're expressed as a short-term and a long-term exposure limit, and collectively that's your TWA, or time-weighted average. Let's talk a little bit about T4, our personal multi-gas detector, and how this can help you accurately track and record these TWAs. So we're very proud of our T4. It gives compliance to customers who want the 4 most popular sensor options and data capability, more on that later in the presentation, in a very rugged, very simple to operate device. It's one of our most popular gas detectors, and that's for very good reason. It's tried, tested and true, very rugged, and won't let you down. We're very proud of what we achieved with T4, and it continues to be a real contender for the best product within this space. So I want to play you a short video now, which is going to talk about T4, and it's going to give you a little introduction and a little overview of what T4 is and can do. T4 is our personal protection solution for alerting against the 4 most prevalent gas hazards: oxygen depletion, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and flammable gases. As well as the one-button operation and easy-to-use menus standard to all of our products, you'll find T4 is rich in beneficial features. Positive safety. Crowcon's visual traffic light indication gives a constant reassurance that T4 is compliant and operating soundly. TWA resume function, unique to T4, ensures the correct assessment of exposure to toxic gas over your entire shift. Because unlike other units, T4 doesn't assume your work shift is just beginning every time you turn it on. T4 allows you to work multiple shifts between recharging, and display can be inverted so you can easily read the screen while still wearing it. Rugged construction and an integrated rubber boot makes T4 one of the most durable units available. An optional clip-on filter cover, which you can easily remove and replace, ensures sensors are protected in dirty environments, making T4 your ideal partner in demanding situations. These and many other intelligently designed features mean our T4 portable multi-gas detector gives you confidence no matter how you look at it. So there's lots of features available on this product. We've talked about a lot of them in the intro I just gave you. Positive safety, it's very rugged. It's got this integrated rubber boot that means it can handle some really significant drops and shocks. There's the main 4 sensors in there, great runtime, simple to use, display flip. It does tick a lot of boxes, this product. But what we're here to talk about today really and focus in on is TWA resume. So again, I now have another video for you, this time talking about TWA resume and how that can help. So T4 is the personal protection solution, as said before, for alerting against the four most prevalent hazards: oxygen, carbon monoxide, hydrogen sulfide, and flammable gases. TWA resume function, unique to T4, ensures the correct assessment of exposure to toxic gas over your entire shift. When monitoring toxic gases, there are a number of different alarm levels which the detector must monitor against, including long-term exposure limit, which is usually measured as a time-weighted average over an 8-hour period, giving a measure of users' average exposure to the toxic gas over that 8-hour period. When turned on, the calculation of TWA by many portable gas detector units assumes it's the beginning of a work shift. However, if the unit's switched off, for example here during a lunch break, it could risk overexposure of the worker. The TWA resume function, which is unique to T4, provides the option to continue the TWA calculation and ensure the worker exposure is correctly assessed. Our T4 multi-gas detector will give you confidence no matter how you look at it. So let's dig into TWA resume just that little bit more. After powering off a detector mid-shift, the option to resume that shift is given when it's powered back on. Resuming will continue with the already accumulated TWA data from the shift. This is the only way to accurately ensure compliance. So for example, if we look at the graph here, and it was also shown in the short video, your shift starts at 8 and you turn your detector on. You can see here the exposure levels, and you can see the average. The green line is the average here, and you can see it's kind of growing and where we are. At 12 o'clock here, the detector's switched off. That could be because the worker has a lunch break, and on that lunch break, they've decided to turn it off for a multitude of reasons. It could be that they have confidence beep activated, and they don't want this device beep, beep, beep all throughout their lunch break. They might want that off. It might be that the light distracts them when they're eating, and again, they've got that confidence light that's flashing. It could just be that their battery's at 50%, and they've decided to turn it off so that they've still got battery for the rest of the shift. There's many reasons why someone may turn it off for a lunch break. Maybe they're traveling to a different site, so they turn it off while they're driving. They don't want to be distracted by the beep. So there's many things that can happen throughout a work shift that would lead to someone turning the detector off. When they turn it back on to continue with their work day, our device gives you the option to continue shift. It says, would you like to resume? And you can click the button to continue and resume your shift. It then keeps the data it got in the morning and carries on. And you can see here in this example on the graph that if it did continue to monitor the data, actually by maybe 1:30 or so, you would actually exceed the long-term exposure limit. You are actually in breach of regulation. You've inhaled too much low level of that gas over that period, and it would beep at you. If you were using a competing device that doesn't allow you to resume, when you turn it back on, it raises all the data, it assumes it's a new shift, and it starts again. So without TWA resume, if it started again, you see here, it wouldn't beep at you. You would have been overexposed, you would have broken the time-weighted average, the well limit, and you wouldn't be notified. You would have no idea. So TWA resume and what we've done here, it really is the only way that you can accurately ensure you're definitely in compliance to TWA. All of the TWA alarms are stored in the detector logs, and they can easily be transferred to our new Crowcon Connect platform. That's our gas safety and compliance insight solution. It's a great solution. We're hosting other webinars about this if you want to learn more. It features on our website. So again, go to crowcon.com. It's right there front and center on the homepage. So have a look at what this can do. But it's a brand new gas safety and compliance insight solution. It works on a 3-step process. You record data throughout your shift. At the end of the shift, when you dock the unit to charge, it gets automatically with no user intervention, uploaded into the cloud. From here, you can then analyze, you can look at that data across the entire fleet, you can see everything in one place, and you can really get some good insight from that data. And of course, you can then take action. So you can look at that data, you can look at areas where you've had alarms or issues, you can look at compliance, inventory and asset management. It's all in there, and you can take some really good action. This will ensure your compliance, it will improve your efficiency and reduce some costs. It'll also raise levels of safety. So please do check out Crowcon Connect. Our T4 is fully compatible with it, and all of the TWA data logged in the device will go into Crowcon Connect. Any TWA alarms will appear in here front and center so that the appropriate action can be taken. It's worth noting that TWA Resume is patented. It's unique to Crowcon. It's only available on Crowcon devices. It's been so well received on T4 that we're bringing it to Gas Pro. We have new firmware, which is currently in beta testing phase, and it's progressing towards a final candidate for release very nicely. We aren't having any problems so far, so we're really excited to add this extra functionality into our Gas Pro. We're also putting selectable pellister correction factors into this same new firmware release. Our target's July. So come July, the TWA Resume compatible product family is growing with an exciting new addition. I'd like to finish up and round off with a bit of a summary for T4 here. Again, I thought this would be useful if you do decide to contact us for a copy of this recording. You can take a look at this, and it puts all that key T4 information into one place. So we have TWA Resume, which is the highlight feature that we've been looking at in today's webinar, but we also have an 18-hour battery life, backlit display, extremely rugged design. It's water resistant, it's dust resistant, dedicated sensors for each of those gas hazards, positive safety so that you know the device is working properly as intended and that you are protected. It's of course intrinsically safe with all of the required certification. Multiple alarms on there, very loud audible alarm, bright red blue LEDs, vibrating alert. It's all there to try and show you that you've got that gas hazard around you and that you do have an effective warning. So simple to operate, one button, really easy, minimal training required. It's a highlight of our range. It's always been a great seller for us. And again, we feel that unique patented features like TWA Resume really do help set this apart as a specialist gas detection device that's fully focused on safety. Throw Crowcon Connect into the mix, and of course you'll see that we've added and expanded that feature set to make this product even more valuable to our customers. You can now get all of the information at the end of the shift, at the end of every shift, straight up into the cloud, where you can perform your analysis to improve safety, to reduce those costs and improve efficiency, and to also ensure that you're compliant with all the latest legislation. So that brings us to the end of today's webinar. It's short and sweet and hopefully to the point. Thank you all so much for your attention. Hopefully you understand a little more about TWAs and what they are. And again, I'm really hoping that TWA Resume resonates with you, as it is the only way to ensure that it's correctly measured if someone does turn it off mid-shift. And that does happen quite regularly. We've now got some question time, so I'm going to go to the question section. I'll answer any questions in there, and then we'll round this off. Okay, so. Okay, I have a question here from Adam Barrett. He's asking, can I get a copy of the slide deck at the end of the presentation? Yes, Adam, you definitely can. I will contact the team after this, and I'll get them to email you the slide deck. Okay. Great. Well, there's no more questions, so hopefully that means the presentation was quite self-explanatory. Thank you all so much. It's been great to spend some time with you this morning. Hope everyone's staying safe throughout these trying times. And again, if you do want to get in touch with Crowcon about anything you've seen today, marketing@crowcon.com is the email address to use, and we'll help you however we can. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to end the webinar now, and hopefully I'll speak to you again sometime in the future. Thank you and goodbye.